I now hand the conference over to Mr. Samir Kothari, Managing Director. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Kathy. Good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to our Q1 FY22 earnings conference call. I hope each of you and your families are vaccinated, and if not, I urge you to get vaccinated as soon as possible. I'm joined on the call by Ganesh Agekar, who is our Executive Director, Mayank Samdani, who is our Group CFO, Vimal Solanki, who heads our Corporate Communication, and SGA, our Investor Relations Advisors. I hope everyone has had a chance to go through our updated investor presentation, which was uploaded on the exchange and our company website. The performance of this quarter has been excellent on an year-on-year basis and steady as compared to the quarter-on-quarter basis. In terms of various operational highlights, I frankly have nothing new to report. Everything that was supposed to happen is happening, albeit a little slower than what we would have liked because of the pandemic and because of COVID. However, factories are ramping up both in Silvassa and Hyderabad. New projects announced earlier are in construction in North India as well as Hyderabad. We are on track with our guidance, and Mayank will take you through the numbers shortly. I, however, want to take a couple of minutes just to lay out the broad roadmap of the company. I know that in the last couple of investor calls, a couple of quarterly calls, we've been very cagey about what's going to happen next about the company after getting to 2,000 crores. This caginess was not because we did not have a plan or because we did not have a target, but it was more because we were being circumspect because of COVID and because of the pandemic. It was still, and unfortunately it still continues to be an unknown variable. We don't know what's going to happen with the third wave, etc. And we didn't want to end up saying something and then find out that our targets were completely upended by the pandemic. So I'm a little bit more confident now, and that's the reason we gave out a guidance. We are very convinced that contract manufacturing as a subcategory of the FMCG universe is very relevant, and it's becoming more and more relevant. The last year and the pandemic has served as a catalyst, and it has precipitated a lot of changes in the consumer behavior, which has led to the brands relooking at their manufacturing strategies. A lot of the new D2C brands have sprung up in the last 1 year. Online sales for most of the incumbent brands have increased substantially, in some cases going up to double digits now. So based on that, we believe that the next couple of years should be exciting in terms of growth for the contract manufacturing industry. We are very excited about the future and are working hard on a pipeline which will take us to our goal of doubling our turnover from 2,000 crores to 4,000 crores in the next 3 years. This growth will come via greenfield as well as brownfield expansions and also through acquisitions. I can't give any more specific details, but I can confirm that the entire management at HFL is working hard, and the results should start showing up within the next 6 months. In addition to FMCG, we are also evaluating adjacent sectors like health and wellness, which has seen a tremendous amount of growth in the last 1 year due to the awareness of the COVID and the pandemic. I'll be happy to take questions on this, but in the meantime, I will hand over the call to Mayank, our Group CFO, who will take you through the financial results for the quarter ended June 30th.
Thank you, Samir, and good afternoon, everybody. We are happy to share that our growth momentum in the business has sustained, and this is seen in our numbers also. Our total revenue for the quarter has doubled as compared to last year quarter one, which stood at around 457 crores. The good thing is that the company operated all its plans during the quarter despite of second wave of COVID. Moreover, our recently commissioned facilities at Silvassa and Hyderabad have been ramping up well and started contributing to our revenues this quarter. Our EBITDA for the quarter has seen a growth of 70% year-on-year, which stood at 26.84 crores. The PAT is up by nearly 3 times at 11 crores. Our net worth as on June stood at 236 crores. happy to inform that ATC Beverages has signed an LOI with the large FMCG company to start manufacturing their beverages on a dedicated basis. Despite delays due to intermittent lockdowns, the project work of soaps and bar plant in Hyderabad and the F&B plant in North India is progressing as per schedule. Project work of Hyderabad plant and as well as the new plant in North India is expected to be completed by Q4 FY22, and the commercial production is also expected to commence by Q4 FY22. Our second facility in Silvassa, which was set up to manufacture surface cleaning liquid on the back of the toilet cleaning facility, has commenced commercial production in May 2021. We expect to ramp up to its rated capacity by Q2 FY22. Some information about our merger. The shareholder in their tribunal convened meeting held on 30th June 2021, pursuant to the order of the Honorable NCLT Mumbai bench, approved the composite scheme of the arrangement and amalgamation of beverage plant of Mysuru and malt beverage plant in Coimbatore. The final order from the NCLT Mumbai bench is awaited. With the continuous focus on exploring the organic and inorganic opportunities, we are confident of achieving our medium-term and the long-term revenue target. Moreover, with the increase of our revenue and the profitability in the coming years, we remain focused on strengthening our balance sheet and cash flow, which would facilitate us on the further growth. In regards to our guidance of doubling our turnover in next 3-4 years, we are confident that we can fund it from our internal accruals and the new debt to be taken in that. And if needed, we can always raise equity as and when required. With this, I will like to open the floor for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Thank you. The first question is from the line of Vishal Gutka from Phillip Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Samir. Congrats on a good show despite the challenging environment. A couple of questions from my side. Recently, you hired a senior resource to look after health and wellness segment. If you can just throw more light, what segment you are targeting, benefit-based, OTC segment or the Ayurvedic segment, where the raw material could be a challenge. So if you can just throw more light, what are you trying to do in that segment?
Sure. Hi, Vishal. Vishal, yes, we've just recently, Mr. Sanjay Sehgal has joined our team. And you're absolutely right, Sanjay is a very senior resource. He has tremendous experience, having worked with Unilever as well as Sandoz. He was the managing director for Sandoz for quite a few years. We are basically looking at products which are similar to the FMCG products, but have a therapeutic marketing plank or a therapeutic claim. To give you an idea, if you look at toothpaste, right? So you have Pepsodent and you have Colgate, and then you have a toothpaste like Sensodyne. Now Sensodyne, while it is a toothpaste, it has a therapeutic claim being that for sensitive teeth. And as a result, it does not come in the same basket as, let's say, a Colgate or Pepsodent. Similarly, if you look at other products, in case of, let's say, ready to drink, you have the carbonated drinks, you have juices, and then you have fortified water, right? Now the fortified waters come with a therapeutic claim, and as a result, while they require very, very similar facilities, because of the fact that they have a therapeutic claim, there's a greater degree of regulation, compliances, and GMP hygiene requirements as compared to FMCG. What we are trying to do is we are trying to build our capabilities in that segment. We will be looking at ointments, we'll be looking at creams, lotions, we'll be looking at all of these products which are slightly more therapeutic or slightly more value added as compared to FMCG. I'm not sure I clearly understood your question about raw material availability in terms of the health and wellness products. So I don't know what the question is.
So some in case as herbs are used, so in sometimes you don't find that the regular supply of herbs is not available. In case you're targeting the Ayurvedic segment, if you're targeting the OTC segment, then I don't think it should be a challenge for you.
Sure. So again, if Vishal, if you look at the company and if you studied our business model, we basically are contract manufacturers. We don't do any marketing branding ourselves. So obviously, if we decided to get into Ayurvedic products, we would be working with companies who are already doing those kind of products. We would work very closely with their teams in terms of deciding both the technical viability of the product and the economic viability of the product. So yes, you're absolutely right that in some cases, availability of raw materials is a constraint for the product. But then our project and our capacities would take that into consideration right at the beginning.
Okay. And does this product generally will have a higher margin for you, or it will be similar to, because it is therapeutic based and benefit based, at the same time, as you told that it is compliance based because it's benefit based. At the same time, does the capex go up for this kind of product, or if you can throw more light on the margin in the capex part for the OTC part?
So Vishal, again, it's premature for me to talk about specific numbers, but logically speaking, yes, the capex will be higher as compared to a regular FMCG factory, just purely because if we are looking at compliances either of MHRA or US FDA, etc., the requirements in a facility like that would be much more stringent than what, let's say, the Indian FDA requires for manufacturing FMCG products. So logically, yes, the capex would be higher, the OPEX would be higher, and frankly, we are hoping that our margins will be higher as well. Does that answer your question, Vishal?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Samir. Second question is on the PLI scheme. So any thoughts there? Are you planning to tie up with some of the brands who might have applied for PLI? So any thoughts out over there, or you can do it on your own, or it's only specific for brand owners?
So, frankly, the law is not specific only for the brand owners. However, the brand owners definitely have a better bargaining power in terms of applying for those schemes and discussing it with the government, because they can then offer a host of investments, host of manufacturing facilities, etc. The discussion is on with brands where our investments for those brands will be considered a part of the investments required for the PLI scheme. Having said that, and this is something I've mentioned earlier as well, the PLI is basically an enabler for us. I don't think it's going to do anything in terms of our margins or in terms of our bottom line, because a large part of the benefit will get passed on to the customers. But as a manufacturing impetus and in terms of a resource, a policy resource that the government has announced, it will definitely make a difference in terms of Make in India and the emphasis of manufacturing in India.
Great. So last question from my side. You intended that you want to double the turnover by 2025. I just wanted to check to what extent the existing capex will be suffice, or do you require more capex? All the capex is a lifeline for you. Every year we'll be doing some other capex. So what kind of, I just wanted to know what is the asset turnover as of now, and how far, what kind of incremental capex might be required? Because on one hand, you're also planning to go for acquisition. So just if you can give more light on it, if you can throw some more color on this topic.
So I'll ask Mayank to answer this, Vishal, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi Vishal, this is Mayank here.
Yeah.
Vishal, our current asset turnover is around 6, right? And
yeah.
with the new which we have already announced, we will be at around 5 of the fixed asset turnover ratio, which will get us to around 2,500 with all the new plants coming up and the ramping up of the new plants. So we are quite confident that we will get to the doubling of our turnover, but this will require additional capex surely, which, as I told earlier, that we will fund it through the internal accruals, and the debt will to be taken.
Okay. If I heard it right, Mayank, you told that with existing plant that is set up, you should be in a position to do 2,500 crore revenue, right? That is, if they run at full capacity.
Yes, right.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Samir and team, and all the best to you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah.
Reminder to all the
We are
participants.
audible.
Ask a question,
If you
may
can
please
just say to, if you can tell him to speak a little away from the mic, because sometimes you hear the breathing. Yeah. Just say that in a few words.
Thank you. Reminder to all the participants to ask a question. You may please press star and one on your touchtone telephone. The next question is from the line of Faisal Hawa from HG Hawa and Company. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Samir, so, on the management front, what kind of steps are we taking to now, handle a much more cross-country kind of a situation? And have we hired more, senior management people, and what kind of incentives that we are giving to them?
Hi Faisal, we missed having your first question in this quarterly meeting. I mean, you've broken a tradition this time. We were hoping that you would be the first one to ask the question, but Vishal beat you to it. So Faisal, you're absolutely right, and I have time and again said this, that I think the only constraint that we face is good people. I mean, in terms of demand, the demand for contract manufacturing is there. In terms of money and our capability, in terms of financial resources, that is there. What we require is a good team. This is a constant battle that we face. Recruitment keeps going on. Just to give you an idea, in the last one quarter, we've hired a senior gentleman to head our HR function. This gentleman has joined us from a pharma company. Sanjay, of course, we mentioned in our quarterly update. He's joined us to head this health and wellness foray of ours. In addition to that, we were waiting for another gentleman to join in as a corporate QA, who's again joining us from a pharma company. So yes, continuous team building. We've just recently rented new office premises as well. That's investing in capabilities is right now the biggest pain point for us.
And how much revenue can we foresee, say, like 4 years hence from the health and wellness segment? Because only if it makes some dent on our already growing revenues, would it make sense to go into an entirely new vertical?
Yeah, absolutely, Faisal. So I obviously can't tell you how much revenue we will get, but if you just look at the potential of the
revenue as a percentage of total revenue. I don't want any actual figures.
Yeah, so just bear with me for a second. So if you look at the potential of the health and wellness sector, the health and wellness sector is a very, very large sector and it's growing faster than the FMCG. So in the space of health and wellness products like everything which is connected to the pandemic, right? So everything is growing tremendously. In addition to that, most of the pharma companies are also trying to devote a lot of money and marketing muscles to the OTC products. We all have read about PharmEasy and what they are doing. So there's going to be some amount of changes, similar changes that we saw in FMCG happening in the pharma space as well in terms of distribution. So we think that it's very, very appropriate in terms of the potential of what we can do in the health and wellness sector. For us specifically, you're absolutely right that it has to be meaningful. Again, I mean, if you push me to it, I am hoping that in the next 3 to 4 years, at least 30 to 35% of our revenue should start coming from health and wellness.
Okay, that's a very big figure. So I mean, that means that much potential, and you must be having some kind of headway into it.
So yes, like I said, I mean, I give you one example of Sensodyne. Let me give you another example, a brand like Neutrogena, right? So you have Pond's, you have Vaseline, you have a bunch of creams, lotions, and then you have a separate range or a separate product category like Neutrogena, which basically claims to be far more therapeutic than anybody else. And we are now trying to get into that space as well. So while we continue to manufacture the mainstream FMCG products, we'll also start getting into more of these therapeutic products. And as the consumer becomes more sophisticated in terms of their consumption, we've all seen what's happening with healthy snacks, we're seeing what's happening with nutritional supplements. I think in the last 1 year, all of us have consumed humongous amounts of vitamin C and zinc tablets. This is all leading to a huge growth in the health and wellness sector. Vitamin supplements is a very, very large category in the US. We frankly had not, we as a country, India, was not very big on it, but in the last couple of years, I think every house has consumed vitamin C and zinc at some point of time. So yeah, I mean, I think the potential is huge.
And have you added any kind of MNC customers in the last quarter of any shape or size, which is big enough?
We have, like Mayank mentioned, in case of the Mysuru facility, we've signed on a dedicated contract with a customer. Yeah, I mean, adding new customers, several, while we can't give specific details for the sheer reason of brand sensitivity, is something that we do every month, every week, every quarter. Absolutely.
And any progress on private labels by any of the e-commerce giants?
Sure, that's growing as well. Private labels is again, but if you look at from a significance of revenues perspective, private label is very, very small. But from a strategic perspective, private labels is definitely growing. And again, we believe it will grow further. We've signed on with a very, very large retail company. We're going to start manufacturing for them from next month. We've already started manufacturing for some e-commerce players, etc. So yeah, private label continues to be part of our growth.
Thank you very much, Sameer. That answers all my questions.
Thank you, sir.
A reminder to all the participants to ask a question. You may please press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Vijay Chauhan from Right Horizon. Please go ahead.
Yes, congratulations on good set of the numbers. So I just wanted to know if there is any.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chauhan. We can't hear you clearly. Can you please?
Is it audible now?
Yeah, you're audible now. You can repeat your question, please.
Yeah. So congratulations on the good set of numbers. So if you can just provide any guideline on the inorganic opportunity side that if we are actively evaluating, and in case if we are looking, can be the size that we will be looking at if we want to go for any inorganic opportunity. So that will be the first question.
Sure. Vijay, obviously I can't give any specific details, but let me just give you our capital allocation policy, right? In case of acquisitions or whether it's for greenfield or brownfield projects, if we have an opportunity which is a dedicated factory, the size of the acquisition or the size of the investment could be anything between 100 crores to 500 crores. If it's a shared facility where we do not have the guarantee of take or pay or we do not have the guarantee of the business, we would like to restrict our acquisition or the capex size to less than 20 crores. So we continue to evaluate both these business models. So if I have to give you a range, it would be like a really stupid range, right from 20 crores to like, let's say 500 crores. But I think it would be better to break it down in terms of our business model and understand that in the first business model, we are game to invest whatever money it takes. In the second one, we would like to restrict our risks to less than 20 crores.
Yeah, thank you for the answer. And my second question would be like we have seen in the past couple of years, like we were able to meet this FY22 mark of 2,000 crores. So I would very much appreciate the work that our company has done. So like we have come up with the next plan for 2025 for in the next 3 years to double our turnover. But if we talk about like the growing opportunities on the contract manufacturing side in FMCG in India, so how do we see in the 5 years or 10-year kind of period that how this industry can shape up and what kind of opportunity we can capitalize on this front? So any like broad idea or view that we are internally pursuing in long run?
Thank you, Vijay. You are very kind, and you didn't bring up the fact that we missed the 1,000 crore mark in 1920. We had made an announcement that we'll hit 1,000 in 1920. We didn't. We are well on track to meet the 2,000, and we are confident that we should be able to get to 4,000. But just to get on the macro aspect of it, right? So in terms of the market size, we believed, and this is just our estimate, right? That just FMCG contract manufacturing could be anywhere, FMCG manufacturing could be anywhere between 20 to 25% of the FMCG market in India. Now, out of that, if you assume that 20 or 30% of it is going to get contract manufactured, that would be a size of between 50,000 to 100,000 crores. In addition to that, we are now looking at health and wellness, which I believe will in the next 5 to 10 years become as much as 25 to 30% of the FMCG market in the country. And when I say health and wellness, I'm being a little liberal about it because I'm including healthy snacks, I'm including nutritional supplements, I'm including therapeutic cosmetics, personal care products, etc. So I think the market size is very large. I don't think any of us at HFL are worried about the market size. We are just worried about how much share we can get out of that market size and how much we can execute.
Yeah. Thank you. That provides quite insight on the long-term side. Thank you and good luck for the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Reminder to all the participants to ask a question. You may please press star and one. The next question is from the line of Devendra Pandey from DB Financial. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity. So my first question is on the visibility of the revenue target which we had given of around 4,000 crores. So where are we on that?
Devendra, we are working hard towards it. It's a target which we've just announced. 3 days ago. We've started recruiting the team. We have got some projects in the pipeline. We are pitching for a bunch of projects. Right now, it's a goal, it's a target, but we are definitely working towards it. So if you ask me specifically where are we are at a run rate of 2,500 by the end of this financial year. That's where we are.
Okay, and are there any inorganic opportunities that we have come across, and are there any opportunities we are currently exploring?
Yes, Devendra, that's something again which we do on a regular course of events. Without giving any specifics, I think Mayank ends up looking at least a couple of opportunities every fortnight. Some of them materialize, most of them don't. But yes, absolutely. Even now we are working on a couple of potential opportunities. Yes.
Okay, and what would be the strategy behind this inorganic acquisition? So when I say strategy, what kind of parameters we generally look at in terms of strategy, products, return ratios, etc. And what could be our potential ticket size for the acquisition?
So, Devendra, the answer remains the same. The acquisition has to fit into our existing business models, right? So we have 3 business models, and the acquisition has to fit into this business model. So we are looking at factories which are doing dedicated manufacturing for some principles, in which case the ticket size could be anything, or we are looking at a stressed facility which is on a sharing basis for multiple principles, in which case we want to restrict the ticket size to less than 20 crores, primarily because we believe that there's a lot of risk in case of a shared facility and we would not like to devote too much capital to it. In terms of returns and what we expect, we look at acquisitions at the same way as we look at any new business, which is greenfield or brownfield. So we expect to make the same amount of money out of acquisitions. We do not believe that we will do acquisitions just for the sake of acquisitions.
Got it, sir. And how are we planning to fund this acquisition?
I'll let Mayank answer that.
Hi, Devendra. So we have given the target for next 3 years. We believe that our internal accruals will be enough to get the equity for the new projects, and we will surely take that because as we have mentioned earlier that in the dedicated facility the debt is also guaranteed, so we are not averse to take the debt. So yes, we will do it from the debt and equity from the internal accruals mostly.
Got it. So this revenue target of 4,000 crore, is this only through organic expansion or does this include organic expansion as well?
Devendra, it is from both organic and inorganic expansion.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Amit Shah from Ace Securities. Please go ahead.
Hello. Hi, sir. Good afternoon. Sir, I have a couple of questions. So can you throw some lights on operational difficulties that you must have faced during second wave and steps taken to overcome the same?
Amit, sure. Frankly, the second wave, the operational difficulties were far lesser than the first wave, obviously. In the second wave, the governments as well as the local authorities were far more clued in and far more cooperative in terms of letting essential products factories continue to run. I think the operational difficulties in the second wave were more humanitarian rather than from a government or legal perspective. I think the extent of the COVID infections in the second wave and unfortunately the loss of life has been far greater in the second wave than in the first wave. Fortunately, the entire team at HFL has been safe. I should just say that unfortunately one of our team members did succumb to COVID. But other than that, while all of us and most of us got infected, including Ganesh, who's on the call, and me, but we all managed to survive. So I think the difficulties were more around human capital rather than about legal lockdowns, etc. Does that answer your question, Amit?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, and sir, have you see any demand disruption or have there any changes in the customer contracts across your business model?
So, Amit, in case of our customer contracts, they are long-term contracts. They can't change on the basis of a quarter to quarter. Was there some demand moderation in the previous quarter? Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you're tracking far more FMCG companies than we are, and you would have seen that demand moderation across all the results of the larger FMCG players as well. Having said that, FMCG is a defensive industry. It doesn't have that kind of demand moderation that some of the other cyclical industries do. And fundamentally, if you believe that the 1.6 billion people of India will continue to consume, I think FMCG is a structural growth story. So I don't think you'll see demand moderation affecting us in the long haul. For a month because of the lockdowns, maybe for a couple of quarters because of bad monsoons, lack of rural demand, etc. Stuff like that will definitely happen. That does not affect our contracts because, like I said, our contracts are 7 to 10 years.
Understood, sir. Sir, and last question, sir. Have you seen demand scenario post unlocking? So how is the demand scenario for the month of June and July?
So, Mayank, you want to answer that? So, again, if you're talking about demand for us, there's definitely an uptick, and again, it's logical because while in the first couple of months of the previous quarter, grocery shops were not allowed to run completely, there was definitely some effect of the lockdowns in the cities, etc., on demand. If you look at it structurally, I think rural demand is going to be the unknown variable. Depending on the rains and depending on what policies the government announces and the pace of vaccination, we will know what exactly is happening. I am not the expert in terms of forecasting demand for the FMCG market. Structurally, I continue to be very bullish on FMCG demand. But short-term movements because of bad monsoons, lack of rural demand because of less allocation to Manrega, etc., will happen.
Okay, sir. So thank you.
Thank you. Reminder to all the participants to ask a question. You may please press star and 1 on your touchtone telephone. The next question is from the line of Amit Agarwal from Burman Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Samir and team. Such a good quarter. This first question is to Mayank regarding the EBITDA margin. So, I think our EBITDA margins continue to be suppressed. So, if you can help us, how should we visualize margins from here? And is there any inflation-related aspect in the margin? And second, if there is also cost related to the capex that is getting built in other expenses. So, if you can just help us in terms of margin guidance.
So, Amit, hi, Mayank here. So in the last call also and through our various communication, we have given the guidance that our EBITDA margins will be around between 5 to 6% of our turnover because most of our agreements are long term and based on the capital employed. So our EBITDA margin will come in between 5 to 6% here on also.
And is there any aspect of inflation because of the increase in raw material? Because we would be working at a percentage of per kg or some unit like that. So though revenue has increased, your processing fee remains flat. So because of that, our margins are looking lower.
So all of our contracts is a pass-through cost contract where the raw material, packing material is passed through out to our customers. So we are able to do it on month to month or maybe the next month or next quarter. But all our raw material prices change is being passed through to our customers.
But Amit, I think this is Samir. I think what you're saying is right. That as the denominator of sales increases due to inflation in raw material prices or decreases due to price moderation, the percentage of EBITDA will change.
Right.
However, given our experience of the last couple of quarters, I can't predict what the inflation rates are going to be going ahead. That effect is quite minimal. There is some amount of timing difference which Mayank talked about, where our pass-through could take a couple of months, or if the quarter ends in between, it could probably spill over to the next quarter. But other than that, I think, yes, mathematically you're absolutely right that there will be an effect on the EBITDA margins, but I think that will be very, very insignificant.
Okay. And also, is there any cost related to the capex that we are undergoing, which is reflected in the cost, which may rationalize once we start manufacturing?
So as far as the capex cost in the capex expenses in the interim period of when we do the project work, as per the Ind AS, we are capitalizing it, right?
Okay.
So
I'm not sure, Amit, what was the question?
This answer your question, Amit? That is what you are asking?
Yes, that does answer. And Samir, next question for you.
Sorry, let me just elaborate on that, because I think somebody else had mentioned that the other expenses figure in our quarterly update. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so go ahead. Thank you.
So you are asking about why our other expenses decreased, right? Or
yeah.
So if we talk about the quarter to quarter between the Q4 and Q1, in Q4 there are some one-time expenses which we have booked, like the provisions and the stamp duty which was there, which is not this time. And our manufacturing cost is decreased because some of our factories are producing less, right? So this is the main reasons of our change in the expenses.
Okay, got it. And next question is, hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So Samir, this is for you. In terms of our private label, right? So like you mentioned about the tentative revenue contribution from health and wellness, if you can help us, let's say from a medium term, 3 to 5 years, what can be potential contribution from our white label manufacturing?
White label manufacturing will continue to be an insignificant part of the total turnover. If you're looking at a target of 4,000 crores, even if private label literally grows at 100% from where it is every year, it will still continue to be a rounding off error for us, right? Just because the entire segment of private label is extremely small right now. It's growing tremendously, but the space itself is very small. I mean, it's something which you as a consumer, when you go to the store, you can see the number of branded players on the shelf, and then you go and see the private label. So if you go to a shelf which is selling, let's say, toilet cleaners, so you'll see the Harpix and the Domex of the world, and then you'll see one small private label, and that will explain to you that private labels as a part of FMCG are less than 1% of sales for the FMCG market itself. And we will effectively mirror that for at least the next few years, Amit.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Really helpful.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Ashay Jain from Jain Capital. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. I have a few questions. My first question, it consists of 4 parts. So, sir, what is the status of merger with malt beverages? And,
Ashay, I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well. If you can speak up a bit.
Am I audible? Is it better now?
Much better. Much better.
Yeah. So my first question consists of 4 parts. So what is the status of merger of malt beverages, and when we think the merger will get completed? Also, if
The line of the current participant has got disconnected. We move to the next question. That's on the line of Aditi Sawant from ADM Advisors. Please go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I have a couple of questions. First is, sir, does the company have any plans to manufacture products for Mamaearth or, any other new health-focused innovative company? Second is, we have recently signed an LOI with a FMCG customer for ATC beverages. So can you please share more details on the same? And the last one is, what is the company's strategy to improve the return ratios going ahead?
Okay, Aditi, unfortunately, all the 3 of your questions, I'm unable to give you specific answers. So we can't disclose brands and their shares or the fact that we've signed up contracts, etc., which is the reason why we try to steer away from that. Obviously, we work with a lot of new age D2C companies. The entire private labeling division actually does only that. Again, not specifically to Mamaearth, but that's what we do with all the new age companies. So yes, we do work with a lot of new age companies, a lot of D2C companies, as we call them. Now, the second part, in terms of your ATC beverages question, again, it's a large FMCG company. I'm not at a liberty to explain or discuss with you the specifics of the contract. All I can tell you is a dedicated contract. You know that ATC has been a millstone around our neck for the last 2 years. We've been making losses on it. We are hoping that with this contract and a good summer season coming up, it will finally start paying off the patience and the investment that we've made in that factory. And in terms of your third question about how do we expect to improve our returns ratios, Mayank?
Hi, Aditi. Mayank here. So, Aditi, if you look that we have done some capex in last year, which the entire returns is yet to come. So our return ratios is suppressed by that part. So we expect anyways the return ratio to be better when these assets which we have invested, the utilization will come to what are the rated capacities, and will make money as what is required with what is the factory is made for. So right now it is little bit suppressed because of that part, because of the ramping up of the project which is going on.
And I think, Aditi, one main point there is the fact that we raised money just before COVID. We've not been able to deploy that money completely, and which is why Mayank was very confidently saying that we won't require any new infusion for at least some part of our expansion. And we are confident that we should be able to get to a 2,500 crore run rate by the end of this financial year. And which is why those ratios will automatically improve, because obviously we're not diluting anymore, we're not raising any equity. So those ratios will automatically improve once we achieve that kind of run rate in terms of turnover.
Okay, understood. That was helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aditi.
Thank you. Reminder to all the participants, to ask a question, you may please press star and 1. The next question is from the line of Priyanka Singh from Atidan Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, team. My first question is, we understand and appreciate your goal to reach 4,000 crores of revenue by FY25. But given both the UP and Hyderabad plant, which are expected to be commissioned by end of FY22, so what kind of revenue we can expect in the next year, like FY23?
So Priyanka, we like Mayank and I both have separately mentioned, by the fourth quarter of this financial year and the early quarter of next financial year, we should be at a 2,500 crore run rate. Yes. Which is why our target for this financial year is 2,000 crores. If we do not expand, if we do not invest, if we do not do anything else, we expect that the next financial year we should be at 2,500 crores.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what the current projects that we've announced, the current expansion that we've announced should be able to deliver that kind of a turnover. Anything else that we do should hopefully add on to that.
Got it. And another question is how the company is focused on entire dedicated manufacturing model, and will this help the company in coming years in terms of better operating margins?
So in fact, the dedicated business does not have any. So yeah, we are focusing on the dedicated business. It accounts for nearly 80 to 85% of our turnover. We expect that to continue for the next 2 to 3 years for sure. Will it affect our operating margins? Now, dedicated business by definition has a fixed margin which is in place because of a contract for the next 5 to 10 years, right? So assuming that we ramp up the capacity to what is the rated capacity in, let's say, 6 months from the date of commercial production, we will expect to make the same operating profit out of that factory for the next 7 to 10 years. So whether it will change the operating margin profile, I'm not sure how you want to look at it. All I can say is a dedicated site, once it has ramped up, will continue to make the same amount of money unless something happens and we screw it up.
Got it. Okay, that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka.
The next question is from the line of Ashish Jain, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, Ashish.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, Ashish, we can hear you.
So earlier my line got disconnected. So I have few questions. My first question consists of 4 parts. So what is the status of merger of malt beverages, and by when we think the merger will get completed? Also, if you can let us know what will be the revenue addition from the merger and what kind of revenue contribution we can expect in our overall 2025 target.
So Ashish, hi, this is Mayank here. So as I mentioned earlier that the EGM for the passing of the merger is already been done, and we have filed the petition in NCLT. We expect in maybe 3 months that we will get through the merger, right? And if I cannot give you the entire figure because of it is not been done and it is in a privately held company. All I can say that this will be a significant. There will be significant addition to our EBITDA with this merger.
Okay, got it. The second question is, share the details of assets still held in Vanity case. So how much revenue do we clock there?
So when we have already given the target of 2,000 crore this year, right? So when we do 2,000 crore in HFL, out of HFL in other promoter company will do around 150, 175 crores of turnover.
Okay, got it. Lastly, we have mentioned in the investor presentation that the assets in Vanity case will be completed in a couple of years. Have we begun the merger process for the remaining assets?
So we have one merger process which is lengthy enough, which is not been done, and when we have the one merger in process, we cannot start another one. We will see after this merger is done. This merger already taken 1.5 years because of the obvious reason of COVID and the NCLT bench not working on the full capacity. So we have to think that how we do the next thing, because obviously this is a time-consuming thing, a merger,
So any expected timeline, sir? When will it start?
So we've announced that we will definitely get this done in the next couple of years. Unfortunately, since as Mayank mentioned, the legal process is not something that is under our control. If this merger comes in by October, we will start the process for the rest of it immediately after that.
All right. That's all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Harsh Sheth from HDFC Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, team, and thanks for the opportunity. Just a couple of questions.
Harsh, I'm sorry, can you speak up a bit?
Hello, am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity. Just couple of questions. So when we speak about the growth opportunities, do we plan to milk our existing clients, or are we planning to add more clients? And just wanted a bit more clarity on this client concentration part, because I believe, top five would be roughly around 70-80% of our business. So on that front. And secondly, would it make more sense to focus on fewer categories, for better economies of scale, and would that result into, having a better bargaining power with our clients vis-a-vis, getting into multiple categories? If you can throw some light there.
Sure. Harsh, I'm glad none of my customers are online. They would hate to be listening to the words milk them for extra business. But having said that, so here's the deal, right? We, in a way, mirror the FMCG market, right? And the FMCG market, the top 5 guys or the top 4 guys, however you want to slice it or dice it, pretty much constitute 60 or 70% of the market. If you look at product-specific categories, if you look at toothpaste, for instance, Colgate and Pepsodent are pretty much the largest brands, and they control nearly 60% or 70% of the market. If you look at detergent powders, if you look at soaps, if you look at all of those categories. So as a result, our client profile will continue to reflect that of the FMCG market, which is the large guys will constitute a disproportionately large percentage of our business. That's the way the market is. So if you are dealing with an 800-pound gorilla in the market, obviously he'll carry far more heft than a private label which is just setting up, or a D2C brand which is just setting up. Having said that, in terms of our strategy, if I may call that, we are very agnostic as far as customers are concerned. We are absolutely happy to look at any kind of customers. We set up a separate division in case of private labeling to deal with smaller customers and smaller brands, because we believe that going ahead they will become larger and so on and so forth. But for the immediate future, Harsh, there's no running away from the fact that the larger customers and the larger players in the FMCG market will be the ones who will pay for our electricity bills. Now, your second question was, I forget actually.
It was basically why should we not focus on fewer categories?
Okay. Yeah. So in terms of our again strategy as far as that is concerned, so we've been customer agnostic, we've been product agnostic, we've been geography agnostic, right? We could very well decide that we want to work only in one location, or we want to work only in one state, but we've actually gone ahead out of our comfort zone and gone into various locations, including more recently in UP, right? Similarly, in terms of product categories, I think India is such an underserved market as far as manufacturing is concerned right now, that we believe that there are opportunities in all categories. If you just look at a category like ice cream, the current viable radius for an ice cream factory is 400 kilometers, which means if an ice cream has to be transported beyond 400 kilometers, the cost of transporting that ice cream is more than the cost of product itself. Now, if you look at just the number of ice cream factories which will be required across the length and breadth of the country, that itself is huge. So if you look at any of these product categories, we believe that there's a huge amount of white space in terms of manufacturing need and capacity. And as a result, frankly, we are in a situation where if we are getting an opportunity to do something, we just jump at it. We don't ask questions.
All right, got it. That was actually really very helpful. Thanks for that. Secondly, on our gross margins part, so the margins have come off a bit, off late. I understand that with sharpening raw material prices, but how much of that would be as a result of RM inflation, firstly, and then secondly, in these times, I think with raw material inflation specifically, like this hasn't been ever before. Like these are unprecedented times, where prices are rising so sharply. So how is our communication with our clients? Are they planning to postpone this production? How is the entire thing going on?
So first question, Harsh, is that one, raw material prices don't affect us because most of them are passed through, right? They might affect a quarter's performance, but in general they don't affect us. In terms of the gross margin, again, I'm assuming you're looking at it on a secular year-on-year basis. And that is reflecting more than the inflation. It is actually reflecting the fact that as our business is becoming more and more dedicated manufacturing, our margins will start going towards the dedicated manufacturing model. If you look at our business portfolio around 3 years ago, a large part of our business was coming from shared facilities, which included the shoe business, the leather business, and so on and so forth. Over the last couple of years, the dedicated manufacturing business has constituted nearly 80-85% of our business, and our margin profile will veer towards this going ahead as well. We continue to believe that dedicated business will be 80-85 for the next few years, and our gross margin, EBITDA, net margin, all of them will continue to be veering towards that business model. In terms of the raw material prices, I can only say what the Fed and the Reserve Bank of India says, which is the inflation is transitionary. Don't worry.
Right. That was really helpful. Thanks and all the best for everyone.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question for today. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Vikram Solanki, Head Emerging Businesses and Corporate Communications, for closing comments. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon. So the first quarter of FY22 has been in line with the company's target. Though we have witnessed some moderation in sales as compared to the previous quarter because of the lockdowns following the second waves and change in the product mix, we have been able to protect our bottom line due to the inherent nature of our business model. Now, while we manufacture most key FMCG categories, there still is unexploited potential in the FMCG contract manufacturing space. We are determinedly looking to expand the width of our portfolio, assessing categories such as health and beauty, perfumes and makeup, confectioneries, savories, and even pet food. As on date, we are confident, if I may repeat, of achieving our immediate goal of rupees 2,000 crores revenue in FY22, and then doubling of this revenue in the next 3 years. I take this opportunity to thank everyone for taking out time and joining on the call this afternoon. I hope we have been able to address your queries. For any further information, kindly get in touch with us or SGA, that is Strategic Growth Advisors, who are our investor relations advisors. We hope to see you with better results, better performance next time, hopefully some breaking news. Until then, take good care, stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, members of the management. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Hindustan Foods Limited, that concludes this conference call. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.